Awesome. I think we're live. Hello, everyone watching at home or wherever you are. Welcome to the Christian Union's event Fortnight. This is the second of the lunch bars and actually our fourth event. It's been pretty amazing so far. We've got up to so much. Whether you've joined 4 times or this is your first time, you are so welcome. Yes, we are the Christian Union and we've put on 2 weeks of free events with the theme purpose. And today we're going to be looking at achievement and success. Is there a greater purpose? And how amazing it is we're joined by the legend that is Jim Merkett, who'll be talking to us today about achievement and success. I'm so excited to hear what you've got to say, Jim. Really looking forward to what you have to say about if there's a greater purpose. With that being said, thank you so much for being here, Jim. Thought maybe you'd like to briefly introduce yourself to us.
Yeah, thank you, Amber. And great to be with you all today. Thank you so much for joining in. As Amber said, my name is Jim. I work full-time for a national charity that exists to help students at university ask and answer some of those big questions in life. And the kind of questions that we're thinking about this lunchtime and throughout these couple of weeks, big questions about things that really matter, about who we are, where we're going individually and as a culture and society. And does God have anything to speak into those big questions of life? Can he provide compelling, beautiful, truthful answers to the questions that we're asking and the answers that we're longing to find? So it's my great joy to be with you today. I enjoy having chances to speak at these kind of events all around the Midlands. Thank you for your welcome. It's great to be with you today.
Oh, thank you so much, Jim. That's really exciting. Did actually find out that you were a CU or Christian Union staff worker back in the day. Would you like to talk a little bit about what that was like?
Yeah, thank you. So it's actually my second stint with that charity that I mentioned when I was a bit younger with a bit more hair, fresh out of university. I spent 4 years working alongside Christian unions a little bit further south in the Midlands. So I was based in Coventry area. So I used to spend my time supporting and trying to raise those big questions of life with students at Warwick, Coventry, Leicester and Northampton universities. I loved it. It was 4 great years. I loved kind of getting to know people from all sorts of different backgrounds, some with faith, some with no faith, and just trying to explore together how we make sense of our world and whether God has anything to say on those discussions. And it was 4 great years. It feels a long time ago now, but still happy memories nonetheless.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's lovely to have you here. And I hope everyone is really excited to get started. And so Jim has kindly agreed, like our lunch bar speaker on Tuesday, to do a quick Q&A afterwards. So what that basically is you go on to slido.do with the code #purpose18th. Really encourage you to use this. It was so great because it just got you thinking of questions that you might want to ask Jim at the end, and I will relay that to him. So basically any questions that you have that come up in the talk, please do put them in, kind of anything that's relevant or something that maybe you're a bit confused about or just something you want to address. Please do ask. And we would love to see your thoughts and your questions, and Jim has gracefully helped us with that. Awesome. So with all of that said, Jim, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you.
And take.
Great, thank you. Well, as I say, welcome to the event today. It's great to have you with us watching live. I'm really sorry we can't be in the same room because of lockdown, but I hope you're staying safe and doing well today, wherever in the world you're dialing in from. In case you're interested, I'm dialing in from a small town called Kenilworth, just south of Coventry. It's great to be with you today. As Amber said, I'm going to talk for about 15 to 20 minutes. and trying to help us think through some things. And there'll be an opportunity for you to ask any questions of clarification or to disagree or to come back at me on anything. Do feel free to use the Slido option to ask your questions. So this lunchtime, we're asking the question, achievement and success, is there a greater purpose? And that's a great question. So what do you think achievement looks like? Who do you think of as successful? Actually, it's quite hard to pin down definitions of achievement and success. So, for example, we could think about academic success. Here is my degree certificate. Shows that I got a degree in geography in the distant past. And there was more to it than just colouring in. At degree level, you had to learn to colour in between the lines. Does that certificate mean that I've been successful? Well, possibly in some ways. But is there more to achievement than just getting some little letters after your name? Or we could think about sporting success. Dina Asher-Smith is the fastest British woman ever. She won 100-metre silver and 200-metre gold at the World Athletics Championships in 2019. A few weeks ago, she set a world-leading time for running 60 metres indoors. And I'm sure she'll be one of the stars of the next Olympics if they finally happen. So has she been successful? Yes, undoubtedly. But will that success last? What happens when someone runs quicker than her and there's a different name in the record books? Or we could think about financial success. James Dyson's a British inventor, industrial designer, and entrepreneur, probably best known as the inventor of the bagless vacuum cleaner. So famous, my wife Eve and I got one of his vacuums as a wedding present. Well, according to the Sunday Times Rich List, released last year at the end of 2020, he's Britain's richest person with a staggering estimated net worth of £16.2 billion. He's so famous that he's even opened his own university in 2017, where students can work in a position in his company for 3 days a week. They can receive a salary and have their tuition fees paid for their 4-year course. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? I'm sure it's not too late to transfer if you want to. So has he been successful? Yes, without a shadow of a doubt. But is there more to being successful than just being ridiculously wealthy and having your own university? Or we could think about success in influencing others. I'm sure we were all sad to hear of the recent death of Captain Sir Tom Moore. He raised more than £32 million for the NHS under lockdown by walking 100 laps of his garden before his 100th birthday. His enthusiasm for life, his concern for others, and his confidence for the future really influenced me, and I'm sure many of us watching today. He even had a #1 single that knocked The Weeknd off the top spot. Well, does that mean that he's been successful? Yes, totally. But is there something about that story and the shortness of life and the finality of death that means our achievements are fragile and that puts them into perspective? You see, this lunchtime, I think we need to think again about achievement and success. I think we need to do that because it seems to me we run into 3 problems when we start thinking in this area about achievement and success, and especially about our own personal achievements and successes. Problem number 1 is that instinctively, when we think in this area, we seem to end up playing the comparison game. We might be successful in some way. Say we get a good mark on an assignment. But there will usually be someone who is more successful than we are. someone who gets a better mark than we do, or does better on the next paper than us. And so we can end up frustrated or envious, or always comparing ourselves in relation to the achievements of others. We can feel good about ourselves when we're doing well, but crushed when others do better than us. You see, it's so easy, isn't it, to connect our sense of self-worth with our successes. And why do we do that? Well, I think it's because we want to be recognized and validated and loved. And we think that being successful is the key to that. But playing the comparison game is a tiring way to live, isn't it? It diminishes us, leaves us with a fragile sense of self-identity, and distances us from other people. We have to keep on achieving, outscoring others, being the best. It's like we're constantly running on the success treadmill, but each time we have to keep running harder and harder and faster to stay on it. See, we need to ask, is it possible for us to be loved and validated and recognized, all the things we're looking for, without having to achieve it? That's problem number one. Problem number two, when we think about success, is that we can find it hard to know when we've been successful enough. Taylor Swift has 88 million Twitter followers. That is staggering. But Katy Perry has 109 million. So has Taylor been successful enough? How do you calculate that? It's really hard to answer that question, isn't it? And I think part of why it's hard to answer that question is that some people seem hugely successful, but it still leaves them unsatisfied. Take Russell Brand, the comedian, author, and personality. He said, when I was growing up, I thought I'd be a lot happier if I was famous and successful and if I had money. But he was surprised to discover that even with his fame, he wasn't truly happy. Or take Jim Carrey, a hugely successful actor who won 2 Golden Globes for his work. He said, I think everybody should get rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed of so they can see that it's not the answer. Or take Johnny Wilkinson, the guy who kicked the winning points when England won the Rugby World Cup in 2003. He said, to say I've played through 4 World Cups, 2 Lions tours, 91 international games, and a ridiculous number of injuries and other setbacks gives me an incredibly special feeling of fulfillment. But I know myself well enough to know that I will never truly be satisfied. So how much success is enough? Well, in the words of Jenny Lind's character from The Greatest Showman, all the shine of 1,000 spotlights, all the stars we steal from the night sky will never be enough. Never be enough. Towers of gold are still too little. These hands could hold the world, but it'll never be enough. Never be enough. You see, success and achievements won't truly satisfy us. They won't quench that instinctive human desire within us for purpose and meaning and significance. They go some way, but they can't fully deliver on those things. So we need to ask, are we here for more than just being successful in those ways? That's problem number 2. Problem number 3 is, and I don't want to kill the mood this lunchtime, but the shortness of our lives and the sobering reality of death puts our achievements and successes into perspective. We might be successful here and now, but there's something about our mortality that mocks our efforts to achieve. In 1880, Russian author Leo Tolstoy said this: "My question was the simplest of questions lying in the soul of every person. Is there any meaning in my life that the inevitable death awaiting me does not destroy?" See, death puts a big question mark next to all our successes, doesn't it? We might be financially successful, but we can't take it with us. Everyone always leaves all of it behind. We might be a success in the sporting world, but our bodies will slow down, get old, and eventually wear out. And most painful of all, we might have successful relationships, but they're ended by death and leave a huge gap in our hearts. So we need to ask, is there something or someone who can provide a solution to the problem of our mortality? So all that comes together, and when we start thinking about achievement and success, we're forced to ask the deeper question: is there a greater purpose? And I think it's really hard to maintain that there is a deeper and a greater purpose if this reality is all that there is. You see, if we just operate on a basis of what we can see, touch, taste, and smell, we're always going to be stumped by those three problems whenever we think about achievement and success. See, if we're truly alone in the universe, then it's hard to ground any idea of a lasting purpose beyond ourselves. But those three problems want to push us beyond ourselves. We can't answer them. That's why they're painful and problematic. But what if there is more than this reality? Now, I know that for some of us, that might be a leap. I get that. But for the moment, dream with me. What if there is a God after all? A God who loves us and recognizes us without us having to achieve anything. A God who tells us that we're here for more than just being successful and chasing those things that we normally think of as achievements. A God who can provide a solution to the problem of our mortality. What if there is a God there who can offer us today lasting and a satisfying purpose where we know him and enjoy the life that we were made to enjoy? As C.S. Lewis, the Oxford academic and author of the Chronicles of Narnia stories, once said, "Creatures are not born with desires unless satisfaction for those desires exists." He goes on, "If I find in myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world. If none of my earthly pleasures satisfy it, that does not prove that the universe is a fraud. Probably earthly pleasures were never meant to satisfy it, but only to arouse it, to suggest the real thing." Well, the claim at the heart of the Christian faith that the Christian Union here at Loughborough believes is that there is a real thing, that such a God we've been dreaming about actually exists, and that he stepped into human history, that he's walked in our world, clothed in our human skin, that he's come amongst us so that we might know him. See, this God has a name: Jesus of Nazareth. And if Jesus is who the Bible claims he is, then I think it makes sense to listen to what he says about success and see how he solves those three problems of our achievements that we thought about earlier. Remember, problem one was playing the comparison game. Well, Jesus offers us love and recognition without us having to be successful and to achieve it. You see, he comes not to urge us to be successful or to measure up or to hit a standard and reach a level. No, he comes precisely because he knows we can't measure up to God's perfect standards. He comes to lay down his life, to deal with our natural rebellion against God and our instinctive separation from him, so that you and I today can be restored and rescued and renewed. And experiencing Jesus' love can set us free from playing the comparison game. We can get off the treadmill of success because we're secure in all that Jesus has done for us. Remember, problem number two was the difficulty of knowing how much success is enough and wondering if we're for more than just being successful in the ways we normally think about it. Well, Jesus radically redefines what true success is. Once he asked this really searching question. This is what he said. He said, "What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul?" Wow. That's one of those questions that gets under the skin, isn't it? What good is it for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? See, Jesus is saying it's possible to be successful in all sorts of ways. You can even gain the whole world and yet still miss out on your true purpose. Still not be truly satisfied. Still miss out on the life that you were made to enjoy, that your soul longs for. Jesus says that true success is a matter of knowing the God who made us and loves us. And Jesus makes that knowledge possible, that relationship possible through his own life and death. And having that is enough, according to Jesus. That at the end of the day is true success. That is truly satisfying. Remember, problem number three was the reality of our own mortality. Well, Jesus speaks repeatedly without embarrassment of a life beyond this life, which puts things here and now into perspective, that gives meaning and significance to our daily lives because of the life to come. And he doesn't just talk about that in the abstract, but Jesus proves that there is more to this life and this reality by dying and rising again, which the Bible puts at the heart of the Christian faith, that experience, that event. And all that is possible, leading us to be able to experience the life beyond this life, one day ourselves. See, this truth alone can answer the problem of our mortality. So where does that leave us this lunchtime? Jesus asks us that question. What good is it for you to gain the whole world, yet forfeit your soul? I wonder how you answer that question today. Maybe you're not convinced by that question. You're not challenged by it, and you're happy to leave things there. Well, that is your decision. Thank you for tuning in and watching today, nonetheless. But the stakes are high here, aren't they? In that same setting where Jesus asks that question, he talks about the answer being a matter of gaining or losing our lives. For Jesus, this is serious. Surely too much is at stake to simply dismiss this without examining it more fully than we've been able to do for the few minutes today. Or maybe you're intrigued by the question Jesus asks. Maybe you want to know more about how Jesus can solve the problems that we have with success. Well, there are other events happening throughout the week where you can continue to find out about these things for yourself. You'll hear a little bit more about them later. Why not come along to them again? Or chat through your questions on the Slido in a moment, or maybe with a Christian friend who invited you to the event today. But maybe today you're ready to take that step and respond to Jesus personally. That's great. Jesus makes it really clear when he gives that question that we thought about, what that commitment involves. He says in that same setting, whoever wants to be my disciple, that's to follow after me, to commit to me, must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. See, this response Jesus calls for involves giving up whatever view of success we came with today, acknowledging there are problems in it, and instead taking on board Jesus' view of true success. The response Jesus is looking for involves so identifying with him that we're prepared to give up everything else in order to have him, because we understand he's more important than anything else. The response Jesus is looking for involves stepping off the path of independence from him and instead letting him shape the pattern of our lives from now on. That sounds costly, but Jesus assures us it is worth it. Jesus says, whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for him and for his message will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? See, we still need to answer that question today. So is there a greater purpose than just achievement and success? I think so. The CU here at Loughborough thinks so. And far more importantly than both of those things, Jesus himself, the heart of the Christian faith, thinks so as well. So what do you think? Thank you so much for your attention at this lunchtime. I hope you have a really great rest of the day. Do feel free to put any questions on the Slido and I'll try and answer some of them in a moment. But thanks for listening. I'm going to hand back over to Amber, who's going to tell us what's happening next. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jim. Yeah, that was so insightful. And I think, just what I got from that, it's just how radically Jesus redefined what true success is. And kind of what you were saying, that true success is knowing God and like knowing what Jesus did for us. And just that hunger that we have can be found in him. And so, that was just something I thought of. And thank you for sharing that. And to you guys at home, just want to remind you, you can put in some final questions using the Slido. That's www.sly.do with the code of #purpose18th. Please do ask questions. Jim's really happy to take anything that might have struck you, something you don't understand, or even just any thoughts that you had or you want to counter him. That would be awesome as well. I'm going to have a look on the Slido. Jim, if you're okay.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so we do have some questions. They're really good. Okay, I'm going to go for the first one, which is about comparison. And so this person asks any tips on how to avoid the comparison game?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, thank you so much for asking it. Any tips to try and solve it? Well, I think we have to kind of almost take a step back before we even get to that question and actually ask, is it actually ultimately possible to find a way out of playing that comparison game? is actually the way that we look at the world and think about the world open to allow us to do that? And here's where the Christian faith is incredibly challenging, because actually, I think if you maybe are here today and you're exploring things and maybe you don't think that there is a God in the world, you hold to kind of an atheist kind of worldview, either accidentally because you've just stumbled into it, or very deliberately because you've thought it all through. I think it's really hard to not inevitably end up playing the comparison game if that is all there is in reality. If there isn't a God, then ultimately the standard of how we think about ourselves has to be us. And so I think it's inevitable then that we're going to have to be, we kind of default as humans to kind of always compare ourselves with other people. We feel maybe, I know my own heart, I feel kind of good, and if I'm being honest, a bit proud at times when I feel like I'm doing better than someone. Maybe I make the first team, whereas they're in the third team. Or maybe I get on the grad scheme and they get overlooked, whatever it might be. But the flip side of that is I can feel kind of crushed and pretty useless when I get dropped, benched, and they score the winning goal, whatever it might be. And I think if we write God out of the picture, it is really hard to get off that treadmill. I think it is very difficult, if not impossible, to find kind of ways to not end up having to be pushed back to that comparison game. So I don't think it's a question of tips necessarily. I wish it was. I think we'd be able to kind of live much happier lives if it was that easy. But I think it's a deeper issue, a deeper problem. And actually it's opening ourselves up to maybe there's a standard outside ourselves, above ourselves, a God who might be there. And maybe how he helps us redefine how we think about ourselves in relation to him, and therefore in relation to others. So I don't think it's a question of tips necessarily, but I think it's more a question of if we're convinced there is a God, then looking to him and knowing him, that puts everything else into a different light, I think. And that helps us begin to kind of go, look, if God loves me and welcomes me into his family, which is the heart of the claim of the Christian faith, that we can know God in that personal, intimate way through Jesus, then actually I can begin to step off that mill. I don't have to worry so much about how I do, because I'm not on the line. My identity and sense of worth aren't bound up with my performance, because actually I know that God loves me whether I have a good day or a bad day, whether I get dropped or whether I make the first team, whether I get benched or score the hat-trick, whatever it might be. So I'd love to give you some top tips. And there's loads of ideas you could probably find out there. But I think for me, I'd want to say I don't want to shortcut the process. I think it's a bit deeper than just giving tips. I think it's a question of how do you view the world? And if there isn't a God, I think it's really hard to find satisfying answers to that problem. But I think we can begin to make some steps forward if there is a God. And if he's the God the Bible presents him to be, a God who loves us, who made us, who wants to know us and have a relationship with us, that begins to respin things, to reorbit, reorientate us. And I think that's how we can begin to make some progress. But I wouldn't want to say that I've got that sorted. There are days when I feel rubbish compared to other people. Of course there are. It's not a one-stop fix, unfortunately. But I think God is working in my heart and in my life to help me have a healthier way of living because I know him. And I'm sure other Christians on this kind of stream would say similar things if you ask them as well. Great question, though. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Jim. Yeah, that was a great answer. And yeah, a kind of a deeper question than maybe just what was asking about comparison. Okay, so we're going to go for another question, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
So this question is, surely a good God wants us to be successful in our skills?
Yeah, great. Really good question. Thank you. Yeah. So the question becomes then, if we need to kind of unpick a little bit about what success might look like, and we've tried to kind of say that I don't think success is instinctively what we automatically think it is. Although that might take us some of the way. Maybe even the category of what really is successful in life isn't about kind of doing. Maybe success is a deeper question about being. and not just kind of being successful academically or creatively or in our chosen profession, but actually at a deeper level, success might be a question of knowing the God who made us and is there. But undoubtedly, God, as Christians, we believe the Bible speaks about how God does want us to flourish in life and to kind of use the gifts and the skills and the abilities he's given us. So the question becomes, why is that so difficult? What is it that gets in the way of us living that sort of kind of existence? Because I think we all instinctively feel that sense of frustration. Well, the Bible's radical answer to that is that the problem is not with God in that equation or framework. So the problem is with us. The problem is that instinctively each one of us kind of steps away from God, tries to make sense of reality and existence without reference to God. And so our world shrinks down to us. And that's when we do encounter those problems, to say nothing ultimately of the problem of our own mortality, which you have to try and find a way through whatever way you think about the world. You've got to try and make sense of how that doesn't just mock everything beforehand and just eradicate all our best efforts. So I think the very fact of our experience of frustration tells us more about ourselves than it does about God. And maybe it reveals that the problem might be ourselves, and maybe the solution has to be outside ourselves then. And maybe, just maybe, it's possible that the God of the Bible might have some answers to those problems and be able to provide a solution to that sense of frustration. The Bible uses a language of kind of, that we're instinctively rebellious against God. I use that language in the talk today. Didn't unpack it. Thanks for asking this question. It allows us to do that. But instinctively, we're turned away from God. And so no wonder life doesn't work as it should do. But actually, as we turn back to God, maybe he can help us flourish and be the people that he wants us to be and has made us to be. And we can use our skills and talents in satisfying, joyful ways, always recognizing, though, there's going to be a limit there. True success is more than just achieving those things. And actually, the reality of our own shortness of life warns us to put too much weight on those things. We can celebrate them and enjoy them. They're good, but they're not ultimate. Maybe that's a helpful way to think about it.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thank you again, Jim. And thank you for the person who sent in that question.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, maybe a final question. This is about Jesus and achieving.
Okay.
The question is, does Jesus make me care less about achieving? Why then bother to achieve or do anything during life if we will die anyway?
Great. I think there were two parts. I'll start with the first part, and then Amber, if you remind me of the second part, because my brain was running on the first part. We'll come back to that in a minute. Yeah. Does Jesus make us care less about achieving? Yeah. Often those questions are both kind of yes and no. I think yes, ultimately, in as much as we've got to ask the question, what's driving us to want to achieve so much? What's really behind all those efforts to strive and to achieve and to be successful? I think, as I tried to kind of outline in the talk, often what's driving me, and maybe you watching at home, is I have to prove myself. I have to kind of validate my existence. I have to show that I deserve to be here. In a sense, I think the Christian faith would say that if you know Jesus, if Jesus is the heart of your life, and you're following him, if you're trusting him to bring you into that liberating relationship with the God who made you, then in a sense, you do care less about success. Because actually, you've got the most important thing. As Jesus says, you can gain the whole world, yet forfeit your soul. And Jesus says, look, that's bad. That's a bad equation. That's bad mathematics. Don't calculate it that way. Calculate it a different way. Actually, losing your life in terms of chasing after those other things in order to gain Jesus is the right way to think and the right way to live. Now, that's a big jump if you're just exploring Jesus for yourself. I get that, but that's the kind of logic that Christians would say. That's the way Jesus himself speaks. So in a sense, yes, Jesus, I think, makes us worry less about success because we know that he loves us, whether we achieve or whether we don't achieve, whether we get on the grad scheme, or whether we're unemployed and we graduate for a couple of years and end up working in a job that we never thought we'd end up doing that's not satisfying and enjoyable, for example. So in a sense, yes. But I think in another sense, no, because actually life with Jesus in charge, which is just what it means to be a Christian, is not a dull existence. Christians often kind of bit of a kind of figure of fun for being a bit kind of dull and boring and kind of anti all sorts of things. And undoubtedly, there are kind of ethical kind of frameworks that Christians live within. But actually, the Christian life is pictured from the lips of Jesus actually as an abundant life, a full life, a vibrant life, the life we were made to live and to enjoy. And within that framework, then I think it is possible to want to be creative, to enjoy and celebrate success and achievement. It's brilliant, I hope, and yeah, Christians want to be ambitious. There's nothing wrong with ambition in and of itself. But they want to use those things, not for their own praise and reputation, but somehow to use those things to show how great we think Jesus is. So there's a different mindset, a different goal, a different heart behind those things. So yes and no, I think, is the answer. There was a second question was something to do with death. Remind me what the second part of the question was. Thank you.
Yeah. So the second part was, okay, if Jesus, care less about achieving. Second part, why then bother to achieve or do anything during life if we're going to die anyway?
Brilliant. Which is precisely the point. I mean, that I think is the experience that all of us have, and that's the question that we have to answer. And I think if we don't have a solution to the problem of death, I think that's exactly the right question, and that's why it's so painful. That's exactly the kind of position we have to reach. And if we're an atheist, for example, that is the conclusion that we have to wrestle with. And I'd love you, if you're an atheist here today, to be thinking how you would answer that question, because I'd love to know, because I think it really is the best question. But if it's possible that God might have something to say in answer to that question, at the heart of the Christian faith is this figure of history, Jesus of Nazareth, who we mentioned today. And the heart of his story is the claim that he died to pay for our rebellion against God and open up a way for us to know God ourselves. And he rose again. He died, and amazingly, he rose again. And so he shows us and is able to offer his friends and followers today, not just life here and now, but life to come beyond death. Actually, just as he was raised, the Bible offers the promise that those who know and love Jesus, although they die one day, will one day in the future be raised again and will live as he lived beyond death. And so that means that life here now matters because of that connection with the life to come. So Christians don't just sit around kind of waiting for Jesus and just kind of twiddling their thumbs before they die and go to be with him. No, they're active and energetic to serve the world, to bless friends, to do good to others. Not to earn their standing with God, but because they know the standing they have with God because of Jesus, and in light of all that is to come for them. So precisely because we do believe Jesus answers the great problem of death, we do have a different way of living. It's that important. If Jesus is who he says he is, then everything in life is different. If he's not, well, then we're mad as Christians and you can dismiss us. So the question all becomes what you make of Jesus and what you think about the claim that he did die but rise again. That's a different lunch bar for a different day, but I'm sure you'd love to chat with Christians. If you know any friends about that issue, they'd love to talk to you, I'm sure. Great question. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Great question. And a great answer, Jim. Thank you so much. We'll leave the questions there for today, but so grateful for all the questions that have gone in. And again, if you've got more questions or you want to find out more, please do get in touch with us. Get in touch with us on our Instagram, which is @Elborough_CU, as well as our Facebook, and especially actually the person who brought you along. Maybe the person who brought you along is part of the Christian Union, and they really wanted you to come along and listen to this talk so that you can ask questions for yourself. And with that said, kind of asking questions and discovering for yourself who Jesus is, thought it'd be good to just mention something that we've been plugging kind of all throughout the week, which is a book called Uncover. I know Jim knows all about Uncover. And yeah, I mean, Jim, this is just a kind of random question. How have you found like knowing about Uncover or your experience?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, Uncover is basically just a modern kind of, hopefully, attractive reprinting of one of the eyewitness accounts of the life of Jesus, a gospel by a man called Mark. It's the second gospel you can find in a proper Bible. It's just a reprinting and a kind of a re-edition of that. And actually, that I think is one of the brilliant ways, if you want to kind of explore Christianity, whether you're open to it and kind of positive, or maybe you're just like, you know, well, I think it's a lot of rubbish, but I should at least read it to kind of get a sense of what I'm rejecting. Wherever you're at on that scale, and whether you're kind of hostile or really open, doesn't matter. The great thing is you can pick that book up and just start reading it for yourself. And worst case, you spend an hour, hour and a half, maybe reading one of the books that's influenced the lives of countless millions. Worst case, that's not a bad thing to do at universities. You're exploring the world with an open mind. Best case, well, you might find there's more here than you first thought, and the Christian Union would love to help you with that. So yeah, do feel free to ask the CU to get hold of a copy if you'd like to.
Yeah, thank you. You explained that perfectly. Nothing more to add. Yeah, do please get yourself a copy, and we want to help you with that. So again, yeah, DM us on the Instagram page or DM us on the Facebook page, or even in the YouTube comments. There should be kind of a link that we can take you to. But yeah, just let us know, because we would love you to just explore it for yourself. I think that's the whole point, really. You know, you might have listened to a talk, but actually thought, hang on, I want to discover it for myself and have kind of like my own view of who Jesus is. And as CU members, we want to go through it with you, because we can be there to, you know, ask questions, but, you know, read it for yourself. I found it great. I've done it with a couple friends, and we just had a really fun time just asking big life questions and reading the account of Jesus for ourselves. So yeah, really, really recommend this. Yeah, love Uncover. So yes, thank you again, Jim. It was a really great talk, and I hope you guys at home really, yeah, it got you thinking, might have challenged you in different areas. And yes, still do ask these questions. Ask the person who brought you along after the call. Just tell them what you thought about it. Maybe you agreed or you didn't disagree. So yeah, we would love to get in contact with you again, as we say, on our Instagram and our Facebook. Yes, and tomorrow we have our kind of final event of the week, but we start again on Monday. Do not worry, we have 2 weeks of free events, which is awesome. And tomorrow night's event is a murder mystery. I'm very, very excited for this, to find out who the murderer is. And yes, it will be asking the question of where is justice when I need it, which I think is so relevant to us in this time, and actually kind of at any point. And yet asking this question, where is justice? And is there a purpose to this? We also have 3 more lunch bars next week. So again, check out the Instagram for more details. And we have an open mic night next week as well. So yes, until then, we will see you. I want to thank you again, Jim. Yeah, we're really grateful that you could join us. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
No worries. Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Have a blessed day, everyone, and hopefully see you soon.